It's preparing right now.
Yep.
And then when it's done preparing, it'll come up on the screen, and in the bottom, you'll see there'll be a mute button on YouTube, and you want to press that.
Preparing right now.
And then when it's done preparing, it'll come up on the screen, and in the bottom, you'll see there will be a mute button on YouTube. And you want
Very quickly makes you feel like you're crazy.
Jeff,
Go up on the bottom.
if you're in
Wait,
the.
I think-
Here?
I think on the blue, see the green,
Under-
you talk about the toolbar at the end.
Oh, right here?
Yeah.
Makes you think you're crazy.
No, maybe the next one over, that looked like a big.
Jen, if you scroll to the video. you screen, there's our new button.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah, the box, yeah.
No, it's
No,
not.
it's the one that looks like a megaphone on the left-hand side. There you go. Click it.
Ah, blessed silence. Okay, so just shrink that down out of the way. And then you
Okay.
should be, or click on the Zoom link down the bottom of the tray, whatever, just bring Zoom back up and you should be ready to go.
Ta-da.
Yay,
Here we go.
thank you. All right, good evening, everybody. This is actually the Monday, August 14th, 2023 Board of Trustees informational meeting. And we'll be talking about why this meeting is a little different than the usual monthly meetings of the Board of Trustees. But because the people zooming and people at the table, I'm actually going to ask people to go around the table and then on Zoom to just introduce yourselves for people. Just because, so I'm going to start over here.
Hi, I'm Caroline Brancatella, I'm trustee. I'm Sherry Whiting, I'm the board treasurer, district treasurer.
Jen Crawford, confidential secretary.
Charmaine Wiggesinger, co-vice president.
I'm Kristen Roberts. I'm the library's public information specialist and I'm the recording secretary for tonight.
Lisa Scoots, trustee.
I'm pointing to the screen now.
Jeff Kirkpatrick, library director.
Sarah Patterson, trustee.
Suzanne Angrano, principal with Ashton McGraw Architects.
Are we going to have captions?
Can it be closed captioned? The meeting? I mean, the video?
Who are on Zoom speak, we have a caption.
I don't think it can live caption. The video will have, the YouTube will put captions on it within 24 hours. Yeah.
Okay, so it can't be live closed caption. Right now, is what I'm being told.
We don't have that.
But it will be, the tape itself will have closed captions at the time. So I'm gonna ask everyone to speak loudly and clearly. We also have some guests in the room, but who will introduce themselves should they choose to speak during the public participation. So why is this meeting a little bit different? In order to have a Board of Trustees meeting where actions are taken, we need 4 trustees to be literally physically in the room at the time for a quorum. We don't have that right now. We have 3 trustees in the room and 1 live streaming in on Zoom with the director. And so we cannot take any votes tonight, but this is basically, we'll run through an agenda. So we'll be covering lots of information. But there will be no votes or action taken by the board at this meeting. There was a meeting last Wednesday. The date,
The 9th.
the 9th, thank you, Wednesday the 9th, where there were 4 trustees in the room and the library was able to conduct some business then because 4 trustees could vote on basically financial matters that needed to be attended to that during this month. And that was the action taken, as well as some discussion about some renovations and repairs out front. So tonight, again, is an informational meeting. We welcome everybody and we'll start off, if you're ready to go, with public participation. If anyone wants to speak to the board and on the tape, we'll ask you to please rise if you're able and to introduce yourself by name and where you live and speak loudly and clearly as why you'd like, what would you like the board to consider?
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to address this group. My name is Laura Cooper. I've been a Bethlehem resident since 1989. I'm a retired teacher of the deaf for Capital Region BOCES, and I have a moderate to profound hearing loss in both ears. Tonight, I'm requesting that the board consider installation of hearing loops as part of the proposed improvements to the library facility. My understanding is that The community room is going to be used for a variety of purposes, and if it is to be divided into several areas, I would recommend what's called a portable loop. Library staff would be trained on its installation. If the community room is not divided, my recommendation would be to have a floor loop installed. That's usually installed under carpeting. Additionally, portable desk loops should be installed in both the reference desk and checkout areas. A hearing loop delivers intelligible, distortion-free speech and sound in places of public accommodation, such as churches, theaters, transportation facilities, and libraries. Locally, loops have been installed at Proctor's, Cap Rep, Universal Preservation Hall, Delmar Reformed Church, and the Guilderland Library. Hearing loops consist of a special amplifier and a hidden copper wire that transmits sounds via a magnetic field. The wire creates a looped zone in any size venue, from as small as a New York City taxi cab to a area as large as, for example, Proctor's. The wire then sends the magnetic signal to any hearing device that contains a telecoil, and that individual is within the zone. In other words, you have to be within the loop zone in order to access the sound. The benefits to the user include vastly improved sound quality as well as ease of use. Benefits to the venue include ease of administration, cost effectiveness, and ADA compliance. Further information regarding looping can be found in the links that you've received. Cost is dependent on the type of looping system that the venue has installed. There are a variety of grants that deal specifically with looping libraries, and I'm sure that the staff at Guilderland could be a great resource in terms of the type of loop system they have, as well as the costs that were incurred. Speaking from personal experience, use of a loop has greatly enhanced my ability to understand and appreciate a variety of different situations. To those who might claim that use of a loop is unnecessary because not enough people use them, my response is, if you build it, they will come. Loop installation does not negate the use of more traditional hearing technologies such as headsets. It simply gives an even playing field for those of us with hearing loss to enjoy and participate in everything that this library has to offer. And I thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Thank you. We generally don't have a question and answer, but you've raised the issue of hearing loops, and we'll probably raise that with our architects during the course of the discussion of the renovation. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you all. Have a good evening.
Is there anyone else in the room who choose a guest who would choose to make any remarks to the board? Okay, let's move on then to the architect's presentation, please. Suzanne, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you. Share screen. You all see that okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. Okay, so good evening. Thanks for having us again. I'm wanting to provide a little bit of an update on a couple of different aspects. We've been working with library staff and community on a range of topics to that all inform the process and design of the public library project. So tonight, looking to provide a little bit of a design update, but at the moment we were mostly focusing on some of the other aspects of the agenda. We had recently a recap, community sessions and a survey, so a recap of that. Also starting the conversation around the whys. So I'll talk a little bit more about that, but looking at why is this project happening and what are the values and outcomes that are being explored. The community edition space size, cost, and next steps. So a quick design update. This is, I don't believe much different than if anybody attended or it's not different if you attended the community sessions. And from the last board meeting, it's also not very different. We've been kind of looking at the project purpose. Again, that's the guiding North Star to the vision of the project. And that has been since we started to position the Bethlehem Public Library as a community resource that is accessible to all, offering modern programming in a mindful environment that's nestled within the fabric of the community, designed in a way that's welcoming, simple to navigate, modern, and adaptable to a variety of programs, both inside and the library and throughout the site, optimizing the library so that both patrons and staff have cohesive environments to suit their evolving needs and to support the next generation of collaboration, discovery, and learning. Based on, I'll just kind of give a design update here. So this is the site plan that's been shown at the community sessions. We did receive a lot of great feedback as well as some questions as to why the site has taken form as such. So we are in the process of studying those questions and making sure that we can answer those appropriately or evolve the design in response. So again, at the moment, is not a huge change there, but we did receive a lot of feedback that we'll be investigating. And the design currently is looking at, we've programmed out the interior of the spaces. And so again, the orange is the community edition and a lobby, kind of those communal spaces. The blue is the main library. The pink is teen and children's library. And then the yellow are the staff spaces. And so for the most part, things within the blue area and the yellow areas are feeling pretty good. We've gotten some great feedback, but there are things that we can continue to refine and work with some nuanced options. So always looking at options and how we can improve where we are now. And then regarding the community space, I have a little bit more to discuss on that later. But we got some great feedback on a lot around the size of the spaces, the quantity of the spaces, and how best to utilize those. And then we also got good feedback on the children's library, but it's a little bit more connected to the shape and size of the community spaces. So, you know, evolving that design as we get more information. So I'm just going to jump right into the recap of the community sessions because that's where a lot of the feedback is coming from that we're in the process of studying. So one aspect, so let's see, the end of July, we had our community sessions, if I'm remembering the date correctly. And we had 3 sessions throughout the day. Each had approximately 15 attendees, so about 45 total throughout the day. And we touched on a broad range of the process that had been gone through thus far, as well as diving specifically into different design areas. And we started, one of the aspects of kind of discussion in each of the community sessions was around the guiding principles. So you'll see in the black and orange text, the original statements. And there were discussion points around the second one and the third one. So I'll read them. The first is to create a safer exterior environment that is more accommodating to patrons and library activities, has clear vehicle and pedestrian traffic patterns, and has a more prominent entry. Also to be considered as the port in the storm for our community members and a valued community support partner. To create an easily accessible edition that caters to the library and community program needs and accommodates multifunctional flexible spaces and increases patron capacity to up to 400, and provides adequate space to ensure that multiple demographic needs of patrons are accommodated in functional spaces customized to their intended use and program needs while cohesively integrating efficient employee operational spaces. So having kind of gone through that at each of the community sessions, there were a couple comments. One broadly was just emphasizing accessibility to the large, multiple demographics and all of the users. So the comment earlier regarding the hearing loop, those are things that are definitely being part of that conversation as we get into more of the details, but really taking that seriously, that accessibility is not just being able to get into the door, but navigating the entire space and the resources. So how are patrons able to, and staff able to receive and work with the resources as well. So that was a general one. And then on the second one, there was a lot of conversation in one of the sessions around the concept of the port in a storm, and that wasn't really clear, or that the connotation that it provided wasn't really what it needed to be. So I did want to open it to the board members to, if there's another word that we could use. I've put in resource, but I feel like that's not quite doing it justice. But the concept is that, we talked about that should power go out in the community and is out for a while, that the library can be a good place to go for heat, for electricity, for community. We did have a lot of conversation around if it was really a catastrophe, that all of the spaces, public spaces in your community would likely be that community space where needs to house the entire community rather than just the library. And that would be kind of a unexpected event that we're not necessarily planning for. So in terms of being a resource when, if there's a power outage, then it also we started looking at that conversation as just a resource for community, so that, there's a trend in society today that people are kind of at home or on their virtual devices, and it's a place to have that community and to be that place where people gather and can learn from one another. There was talk around multi-generational sharing and learning. So opening it up, if there's any comments on it, if we should reword this or maybe completely overhaul this one, any thoughts there?
I have a question for Jeff. And also for the trustees, but particularly for the director, is it your expectation or vision that in the event of an emergency, the library would be used to house people or be a resource like that? And if so, I think you should check with the language, maybe with the sheriff's department and the police department, see how they might get some ideas. But the larger question is, in the event there's a storm, literally, do you see, beyond the normal opening hours of the library where people can come in and get cool or get warm in the winter if they need to, is it the vision to open it up as a community space for emergency management?
Right. It's not necessarily the vision to be a warming shelter or a cooling center or any of those things. I think the intention is that the library needs to be a library when those things happen, right? So what are the services that the library is best positioned to provide in those situations? If we have appropriate and adequate internet access, right? So how do we create that backup internet access? Then we need a space for people to come in and use those services when everybody else is down and out of internet. And we've had that recently where even the cell phone towers all went out, right? So, it is an idea that the library provides those sort of informational services. And then also, it's less about being a first responder and more about being a first recoverer, right? So when we expect that our electricity gets restored first before other parts of the town, which has happened. And when that happens, people come into the library to charge up their phones, get internet access. If it was bad enough, then they would be using the library and have used libraries around the country for contacting FEMA because it's a place where we have computers and internet access. So it's more about that vision necessarily than being a shelter, because I think the town does a good job with those plans as far as being the physical sheltering spaces. Of course, in an emergency, super emergency, anything appropriate happens. But
that was my sense. But Suzanne, maybe I jumped the gun. I thought you were intimating that. You were asking that part of the storm that, when you're talking about emergencies, I thought you were getting at, asking us, is that the vision? Or was that not what you were saying?
No, so the original vision, I think where this came from was there was early in the visioning process conversation around being what Jeff just expressed.
Okay.
So what happened in the community sessions was that the port in a storm kind of alluded to, for some people, it's a catastrophe and it becomes a shelter. And then aren't there all these other places in your community that would support that instead of the library? So why does the library need to be that? So that's where the conversation went, despite the intent. So the wording is not clear. So we're looking to, vet the intent and then word it better to capture that intent.
For people who are attending as trustees, what are your thoughts?
I think it has to be an and. I think resource is a fine word, but to Suzanne's point that maybe that doesn't capture the full power of what we're trying to get at, there has to be an and. So to be considered a safe space and resource for our community, or I'm open, I'm looking for other phrases that indicate that not only is the library a place that has resources like the ones that Jeff mentioned, like the ability to charge things, but that it is a place where in those situations all are welcome. So safe space has both physical and a sort of metaphorical meaning colloquially, I think.
I'm looking at synonyms like haven, maybe.
Safe haven?
Like,
Yeah, how about an open and welcoming resource, you know, I don't know, that might not get at the same, because I think haven and safe space might also have connotations people can read in, but do you have a thought, Lisa?
I was kind of focusing on the emergency aspect of what Jeff was talking about and whether we really have captured that. I don't think we have, and I hesitate to use the word emergency too, so.
So Suzanne, do you want this done tonight, or do we just flag it that this needs to be revised? It sounds like.
Yes, it's a live, all of the purpose statement and the guiding principles are live. So the moment that they are confusing or lose meaning, then it's time to revise them so that we are always on the forefront of what's needed for the project. So it's an ongoing discussion and sharing out what we heard at the community sessions.
Yeah. So it sounds like people have thrown some ideas on the table. We should flag it, unless people want to continue the discussion here. We would just flag it and say that trustees should be submitting ideas for that second bullet, unless you want to continue the discussion here in terms of editing it.
No, I would, because it looks like we have another edit to discuss. So I would recommend that we flag it and further discuss it. Also, I'd like to get my thesaurus out.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right, good, thank you.
Great, thank you. And those are all great ideas. So then the third point, when we first started this project and this study, there was kind of a vision of 400. And that quickly became a point of conversation. What is that right number? And I think we've over time kind of coalesced around 250, but we never updated this. So I've put a candidate out there to make that the change, but that's not for me to decide. So if you're not clear, or we can even just say to increase the capacity and remove the number, but just to be a little bit more authentic to where the conversation and design is going, rather than holding the 400 out there.
I do remember this coming up before. When I saw the 400, I was like, why is that still up there? I thought we would knock it down, but again, to flag for, that's something, do you need that number, or can we just end it, that increase patron capacity period? Or are you looking for a number, or will it naturally flow from the design?
We have the number captured in the design, and if that needs to change over time, the design can evolve. So this statement, would maybe is best to be left a little bit more general at this time.
People thinking, again, no decisions being made today, but thoughts?
I agree with the general notion. I think we should look at it, the exact wording, but it's 400 is both inaccurate, and I'm against being overly prescriptive in things. So
I don't think a number needs to be.
Okay.
yeah.
So perhaps maybe flag that as some discussion about just ending it at increased patron capacity with no number, and then we'll revisit it. Whether or not you need a board vote on this, or I don't even know what the process would be, but just for tonight, suggest putting a period after patron capacity. That was a suggested edit for tonight. Okay.
Wonderful, thank you. So I mean, I guess in summary on the the community conversations around this, it was, I enjoyed that there was so much robust conversation and sort of investment in these statements and the project. So also as part of the community sessions, we reviewed these thought starters we went through kind of a full presentation on the design and then had these thought starters for each of the areas. So for site, you can see a couple of sticky notes that people responded to with comments like that there's a little bit of noise based on the location and type of the dumpsters, and curious about, you know, what is the plan for the new dumpster and or location of the dumpster and that sort of thing. Other aspects around questioning what's the pros and cons of a one-way versus two-way traffic, or one entry point versus two-way entry points. So those are some of the things we have studied, and we need to do a better job of kind of capturing that and making sure that that's out there for public review. Thinking about how some of the HVAC units on the roof are a little bit loud and being good neighbors to those that are directly next to you, light infiltration, that sort of thing. So those are some of the comments that came out of there, among others. And then for the community ones, thinking about the size of the space, you see a couple people on here kind of gave their opinion on, we definitely want this size versus the other size. Thoughts around safety and concerns around functionality for the staff. We showed the different options for seating, and there were comments on that. So really good comments around, you know, an opinion if they like it or didn't like it, as well as suggestions on where to go and what else to study. So that was those were really good ones for community. For children and youth, same thing. It'd be there's a couple comments on we'd like to see this, we'd like to see that. Computer area came up. There was some good conversation in one of the sessions around computers in the children's area, and it's really good because we'll be strategic and mindful of that in the design as we move forward into those details. Thinking about how to, you know, this is an investment for years and years. So how do we work with you all to make sure that the design captures what you're looking for, and that even, you know, test it out a little bit. So internally, our design team has been talking about that we have virtual reality capabilities, and maybe we do that with you all at some point, and you can walk around in the space and point things out that you have questions about. So just making sure that you're able to see all of these things before anything's complete. And then lastly, the traditional materials. This is the main library area. So thinking about, there was great conversation around that the library is still a place for books, even though that's not the only thing, especially these days. So making sure that that is clear and visible and celebrated. And that's staff, space, and safety is a high priority. I'm kind of just paraphrasing around on some of these. But spaces that invite collaboration and where people can read and stay for a while, that sort of thing. So great feedback, great conversation throughout the community sessions. So I appreciate for anyone listening, if they attended, I appreciate that. So also, then we had the survey, and we received over 300 responses, which was really great. And we're still combing through that feedback. So I have just a little bit of information right now, not the full spectrum of it. But one of the questions we asked was, who is the Bethlehem Public Library community? And we got a lot of responses. And I think it's good to just make sure when it comes to accessibility and understanding the demographics that we are accounting for the wide range of people who utilize your library. So thinking about kind of, this is a list of the responses we received. So it covers different residents from different regions. It also covers different age groups, different professions, or there's artists on there, children, community groups, educators, families, retirees, refugees, professionals, staff, and so forth. So just a good reminder to make sure that we're accounting for the full community. Also, we looked at, I asked this question, I like asking this question. It helps to inform what the designs take shape as later. But we asked, imagine the Bethlehem Public Library as a close friend think about their struggles and joys of the past, what their hopes and dreams for the future are, and what do they want to become. And the idea here is to provide a short phrase or response on how you would describe the Bethlehem Public Library. And it's to think about how can we best capture all of those positive things that we want to bring forward in the design. Or in some cases you might get a response that's not so positive and is negative, and you want to make sure that we're kind of accounting for that and flipping it on its head. And we got some amazing responses. I think the part of this effort has been just really acknowledging how amazing the Bethlehem Public Library is, and that all the staff do amazing things with their limited, where there are limitations, they work around those things to make sure that the patrons still get the best service that they can. So things like welcoming, friendly, community, helpful, inclusive, warm, those are all the bigger the word, the more responses we got for that. And then you see some other words there. So there's a lot of key qualities of the library that we want to capture and honor in the new design. So another aspect we asked about was what does a modern Bethlehem Public Library mean to you? And again, we haven't necessarily synthesized this into what it means for the design, but here are the key aspects. And then you'll see the quote at the bottom. It says, "Let's honor the success of the current library." And that also did come up in the community sessions, that the purpose statement, there was a comment around that the purpose statement sounds like what the current library does now. And I was struck by that, and I agree. Like the library currently does amazing things within the constraints that it has. So I think it's about eliminating or changing those constraints so that it's not done in a struggle or with any limitations, so that what the library does can really be for the entire community and at the scale that it should be. So again, here that modern library, some comments around refreshed interior, community resources, accessible technology, cultural diversity, accessibility and inclusion, and then you'll see other aspects that kind of relate to each one of those that we receive responses on. So those are things that are kind of being built into the design that we had heard some feedback along these lines. So some of them were really good kind of confirmations of the goals, and then some things that are good reminders that this is a key goal and we need to make sure that this comes forward. Any questions on we have not gotten into all of the results of that, but any questions on what I shared on the community session or surveys?
Sarah or Jeff, it's a little harder to see you. Any questions?
They're shaking their head.
I will make an observation. That wordle that you had about the community, that you could look at that for adjectives for that second bullet that you want revised. I just realized that there's some interesting words that when you go look for that second bullet, start thinking about what words from that list might be fit in.
Great idea. Thank you. Okay, so the next section is what we're calling the whys. So this came out of, or the need to kind of revisit this came out of the community session. So I appreciate, again, all of the feedback that we received. So as we embarked upon the planning study a year ago or so, we went through a process of kind of what are the issues that the library currently has that this project can help with. And we kind of quickly built them into the scope areas and the program areas. And we also built them into those guiding principles, but they became a little bit lost in the shuffle as we proceeded through the design process. So we took those comments to heart, and we'd like to, with the library staff and with the Board of Trustees, to continue the conversation around these so that we can develop a better understanding of what each why is in terms of why is this project happening, and then what are some of the ideas and the value to addressing that why, and then those intended outcomes. So it's kind of an iterative process that we intend on being an ongoing thing, and then that can be part of the community conversation as well. So we've just kind of started articulating this, and this is a nothing set in stone. This is a draft bullet point version of some ideas that have been shared from the library and from the design team, to just, again, make sure that we're hitting on the things that we've been learning along the way. So the first one is to address the outdated and aging components of the library facility. So there's been there's commentary in terms of some qualitative aspects to this, and there's also been a building conditions survey that has some quantitative aspects to this, and we'll be going through making sure that that all gets addressed in the project. But in summary, that's really that the last significant update was around 50 years ago. There's also some asbestos in the building, not a lot, but it means that there are limitations to what some maintenance can happen in some parts of the library. And then also the mezzanine level is where a lot of the staff office spaces are, and they're really not suitable for staff space in terms of accessibility and function as offices. And then to open that up to public also opens up those challenges as well. So those are a quick summary of that, but there's a lot more detail in terms of what those aging and outdated components are, and we'll continue to refine that list and address it. So the second why is that there is to add in-demand space for library users. And a couple of points around this is that patrons are routinely turned away from the limited meeting and study rooms. So currently there's just a couple of study rooms and the 2 meeting rooms. And also that there's kind of community and library programming contending with one another, and it really limits the offerings of the library programming, and then again turning away the community from those spaces. So just really looking to that turnaway rate and how many people should be at these programs to refine what that space should be. And then also that the current meeting spaces and the popular library programs are limited to 100 people. So the community room right now is about 109 max occupancy, which several of your programs exceed that, and you're turning people away. And that's not something that the library wants to be continuing to do. And then also to improve the performance of those spaces, so that it could be as a performance space or also just in general as whatever the space is being used for, that it functions and performs properly. So even if it's just a meeting, that the space is conducive to that, or if it is a performance, that it can also support that. Third why is to add in-demand collection space and improve the library function. So a couple of bullet points under this one is that the Bethlehem Public Library circulation is the highest, sorry, that's a typo, in the upper Hudson library system. That the children's area is often crowded and limited in terms of offerings, and the teen area is also lacking dedicated space. To properly address the curbside pickup function, which came out of the pandemic, and the current setup is not the safest or the most effective for staff. And then to improve and expand staff space for better workflow, safety, efficiency, and adequacy. So again, the mezzanine is a challenge, as well as just that the staff, available space for staff is undersized for the quantity of staff and also the function and services that they provide to the library as a whole. The fourth one is to enhance accessibility of the library's facility and resources. So this means a lot of different things. So to improve accessibility to and within the facility for the spaces as well as the resources. To improve parking area safety and to add parking spaces. To reduce the distance between the parking and the entry. That came up as, if there's people who have trouble getting into the building, it's trying to reduce that challenge. And then to improve the sense of arrival and wayfinding. So part of this is just being able to navigate where is the main entry to the library. There's a lot of comments about kind of going to the garage or a different entry, and making that more clear for this is a community resource that should be clear in terms of where that welcoming arrival is. And the fifth why is to enhance the library's environmental sustainability footprint. And that again has a wide spectrum of things. So increase energy efficiency, leading to operational savings, update the green space around the library and preserve the park-like feel, and modernize site utilities to improve library as a good neighbor. So there's a lot of kind of things packed into each of these 5 whys, and that list might grow in terms of the top 5. But that's what we set out to study with the library, and kind of what the initial ask is. And then those points underneath it are, as we start to develop an understanding and study those things, what does that mean for the library specifically, and how can the project resolve those? So again, it's going to be an ongoing conversation, but if there's any comments or questions on these to kickstart that conversation, that'd be awesome.
Anybody, questions, additions, thoughts?
I think it's a good list.
Yeah, I think it's a very comprehensive list.
I think it's very helpful. So I appreciate the time and energy that went
Yeah.
into it.
Yeah, a lot of those, like I said, it came from library staff. And then just from the design team having gone through the visioning process, going through the community sessions, kind of always continuing to pull that information together so that we're not losing that, which I think is vital to understanding why is this project even necessary.
Sarah and Jeff, you're good? Okay, so we'll assume that this again is an open thing for people to submit ideas and thoughts. Okay, thank you.
Yes. Okay, so the next topic is the community edition. So we've been looking at we've kind of looked at various options and come down to two strong contenders for what this community edition should be in terms of size of the edition, which also is linked to how many community spaces would be in the edition. So we are hoping to resolve kind of a selection on this, that we did send out an informational packet, and I have 2 of those pages in here to review, and we're hoping that the board can help the design team continue moving forward by making a selection, or if there are things that we need to address prior to that decision, that we have all of those items kind of out on the table, and so that we can address them. So with that in mind, so the existing community spaces, we've talked about this a couple times, but you have one large one, the community room at 1,600 square feet, and then the boardroom that you're currently in at 560 square feet. So a total of around 2,200 square feet. And you see there the total occupants for each space. And you'll see we've kind of looked at that as rows of chairs and then tables and chairs, so that we can look at the proposed spaces with those furniture setups in mind as well. So that shows you that at any given point, you're only at about 140, 150 people total maximum for your community spaces. And the goal is 250. So looking at the 2 options, we have we've had different names for these because we had, several options to begin with, but we have option 1 is smaller and option 2 is larger. So option 1 addition is the community spaces proper would be 3,600 square feet, which would be a combination of small, medium, and large spaces. The small would be a module of about 900 square feet to accommodate 60 in rows of chairs, or about 34 in tables and chairs. This size was kind of based on a lot of feedback we got from library staff on what the most frequent community program size is and what the request is. So working with 34, 35 people, 30 to 35 people in tables and chairs, that kind of became the smallest size needed. And we worked up from there. So 2 small rooms make a medium room, 2 medium rooms make a large room. And so the intent here would be to have 1 large room that can be divisible into smaller spaces. Another aspect to this is when it's the large room, if there's retractable seating, which can then further increase the seating capacity, but without the retractable seating, you're looking at 240 or so people. So right around that 250 occupants in table and rows of chairs, and then 136 with tables and chairs. So then you'll see the possible configurations there. The red dashed line on the main plan is denoting an operable partition to divide up those spaces. So that is option one, the smaller addition. And then option two is the larger addition. It's essentially in the main space, if you can see my cursor here, that is identical to the option one. And then it's just adding a medium size room as well that can be divided into two small. So it increases the overall meeting room space to 5,400 square feet. And then your total occupancy would be over that. So it would be about 360 total at a given time. So if there's
Can I ask you a couple of questions about this? So I've been spending a lot of time studying these two diagrams and I'm trying to make it work in my head. So the current community room will be taken out because that will be where the children's library is, correct?
it will actually become staff. It'll be where the staff
Okay.
office are.
So that's no longer in place. So let's go back to option number one. So because that's gone, this option one will give us 2 rooms of that size, correct? And then they can be broken up. So we gain 1 additional community room of that size roughly.
Roughly, yes.
All right, so we gained the one that we lost plus, so that's a +1, so that's 2. We gain an additional community room of that size can be divided. So you go option 2 again, then
But you're losing this room.
you go lose this one too?
Yeah.
Yes,
Zach, right?
Yes.
yes.
Yep.
Okay, so we lose this room, and so the option 1 gives us 2 community rooms that can be divided up in different ways, and then the big one, correct?
Yes. So
Okay,
if you're thinking about what you'd be gaining versus losing in this option, your current configuration is a little bit smaller than the medium room and then a little bit smaller than the small room. So you'd be gaining just extra space in those 2 rooms plus this small room.
okay,
And-
so there's no net gain in the number of community rooms from our current one. I mean, besides configuring things.
There'd be plus 1 small if you wanted to say
Okay,
that
okay.
is equal to the boardroom, but it is still
All right,
bigger.
that's helpful. And then option 2, what's the net gain? If we consider the loss of these 2.
Either plus 3 small or plus 1 small and 1 medium.
That's the net gain, once we recoup these 2 that we were losing. Okay, great, thank you, that's very helpful.
Yes, you're welcome. And the square footages are not apples to apples, so you'd be gaining more space overall.
Yes.
But if you're thinking about rooms, you'd be, yes, that either 1
Yeah.
small or.
Jeff, I know you polled the trustees, do you want to pop, Suzanne, what are you looking for tonight?
I don't have all the responses yet, so I'm not
Oh, you
I'm not
don't?
comfortable.
Okay.
That's why you haven't heard from me, because I don't have them all.
Okay. Okay,
But, right, so we're hoping for that feedback so that we can proceed one way or the other. It's a kind of cornerstone to the design, so, but whenever you get to it.
all right, Jeff, I will say, given Suzanne's explanation tonight, I'll change mine to the larger.
Okay.
I needed to have like that explanation. I started thinking about it is what's the net gain, what's the net loss, so that's helpful to me, okay. So for option 2 is the only way we actually gain numbers of rooms that are medium, correct?
That
Yes,
you would gain a medium, yes.
yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And
Does anyone else have a question or comment?
I mean, I would also say that option 2 gives you a lot more flexibility with the space than 1 does.
My concern was cost.
How
Yeah,
you
but-
cut them off.
Yeah, absolutely. Until I understood what we were gaining versus what we were losing.
Right.
I was advocating for 1 because of cost.
Right.
And I also didn't want the library to be the main or only agency in in town that was shouldering the burden for renovations to provide community space. But given the explanation tonight, I'm willing to go into the large one. Any other discussions, or can Suzanne move on? No? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And I appreciate your line of questioning because that's a great way to think about it. Okay, so the final piece of this is just an update on cost, as well as just to continue that as part of the conversation. So the last time we showed this, it was the 50% schematic design cost estimate. So that estimate has not changed, but the last time I met with the library, had been asked to make sure that it included the construction contingency. So that is now added in. Those are typically soft costs that don't get included in the construction costs, but we're trying to make sure that there's a holistic picture of the entire project. So last time you received this number without this line item right here, this construction contingency. So the subtotal for the construction cost of the renovation of an addition is the same as what you saw last time. It's about 12.7 million. Site costs are a little over 2.5. Then you'll see this line item is, there's a lot of numbers in here that are made up of a percentage of the construction cost and the site costs. So general conditions, overhead and profit, phasing premiums, design contingencies. The design contingency number goes down the further we go into design, because as more design factors are known, the less contingency is required. But so the construction cost might go up, but the design contingency will go down, and they kind of balance each other out. Bid contingency and escalation. So currently escalation is planned for the midpoint of a construction, which we're anticipating would be around the summer of 25. That number will change as the date changes as we refine the schedule. For right now, that's kind of just a draft to have something accounted for. Construction manager fees, again, this is an estimation. So roughly a percentage held there, that's 4% of the rest of the numbers. Depending on where we go with this, is the construction manager the right project delivery? We still need to have that conversation, but holding a line item for that. And then this new number is the construction contingency. I worked with our cost estimator and he recommended 8% at this time. So that would be 8% of the numbers excluding the CM fee. And then the FF&E, which includes the furniture, book stacks, things like that, is unchanged. So the total construction cost is the 28.2 that you see there. Again, that's with the construction contingency added into that. This is also the smaller community room cost. So if we had talked roughly that you'd want to account for the larger, I'm going to really loosely say you would want to add about $1 million, because there's about $800,000 for that additional square footage, and then add a little bit of contingency to that as well. And then the bottom there, you'll see that there are other project costs that are soft costs, and I can look at getting an estimation for these should they come up. Some of them we won't need, but we want to kind of just hold those things in mind, like we've had some geotechnical surveys done, things like that to consider. So that's where we're at right now. And I know that this is project cost, not necessarily reflective of the bond cost or bond, what that comes out to be. So that's still in the works. And any questions on this? Yes.
Caroline.
Quick question on the contingency, the construction contingency. I think you said that was 8%. Is it fair to say that that is on the high end right now because of the volatility of the construction market, basically of building things right now?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Higher than so certainly higher than what it might have been pre-pandemic.
Right. And we are looking to try to, any unknowns, that's a lot of those come out of unknowns or other, changes during construction. We try to account for those. So that might come up as some of those site testing elements instead. So again, so the geotechnical survey that's in the works right now, so that we can build all of those results into the design, and you don't find out about them in construction and have to change the design or the structural considerations. So trying to account for that, but it's always really important to keep a line item there for those unknowns that are not found.
So for anyone from the public listening, the point of the contingency is to keep us from going over budget.
Correct.
And there is a possibility, however unlikely, that we could come in under that. Contingency is not as high as we're reflecting right now.
Correct.
And it also covers, as my understanding, that because we're a school district library, this has to go through state ed review. And as it's doing that, it can cost me rise for materials, et cetera. So that's a cushion to say that this protects us from going over the budget and still being able to carry out the plan. Is that correct, Suzanne?
So at the moment, the escalation that's in the third line item here is accounting for that as best as we can in terms of that we've accounted for the state ed review period at whatever we believe it is to be now in the project schedule. So
Okay.
That's accounted for in the escalation number instead.
Okay, great, thank you. Any other questions on the slide about costs? I thought it was important for you to point out that that's not necessarily the amount, the size of the bond, because the district does have funds that will go towards lowering the overall size of the bond that will go for public vote, and then we'll probably have to get an update for that at some point, so. I don't see any other questions, so I guess you can move on. Thank you.
Thank you. So the last is just wrapping us up with next steps. So again, cost estimate will be going out for another one of those in about a month to determine the project cost, and then conversations around what is that bond need, and trying to articulate that better for the community. Also community outreach around the design as well as the bond and other factors like the whys. And then looking to complete schematic design phase at the end of October. The way that design projects work is that there's a schematic design phase, then there's design development, then there's construction documents. Each phase gets more detailed in terms of documentation and decisions that are made. So just kind of noting that we are still in that first phase in schematic design. So there's still a lot of elements that need to be worked through, as well as opportunity for input and looking at options, exploring options, and getting everybody kind of looking at the considerations and building the whys into the project, so that we're still very early in the design process. And that's what I have tonight, if there's any other questions.
So the schematic design phase completion and the whatever, when those are done, let's say the designs are done and the costs have been assessed, and the board has decided this is how much money we're trying to draw down the amount that's going to go out for a bond. And I know there's some deadlines that have to meet in terms of announcing a bond vote, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But assuming that design, is it possible to go out for a bond before May of 2024?
Yes.
Not that the board is discussing that, or what I just wanted to ask. Because we could either go out during the budget vote, after the budget vote, or what I'm hearing from you is we could technically be ready before the May budget vote.
You could. There are a lot of logistics to go into that conversation and decision. So we have a couple of meetings scheduled to work through that. So yes, it's possible. We might in that conversation decide that it's not wise, or logistically not as feasible.
Yeah, right, absolutely. But I think the board should understand that there are options, and that we should tease out the pros and cons of each of those options. I don't think we want to rush anything, but I just want to know if it was possible.
Right, so we'll be having more of that conversation to understand the feasibility as well as just the pros and cons to that.
Yeah, got it. All right, thank you. I think, Jeff, I don't know how the other trustees, I think we should start having, I don't know what people think, that should be part of our conversation. As long as things can logistically be done and we feel like we're not cutting short the community outreach, which we're going to need, but just our options, understanding the options and what will go into driving us being ready for any of those 3, 4, 2 options that are out there. So thank you.
think we also need to work in talking about the possibility of applying for construction grants through Upper Hudson and where, when that timing is right too, so.
Yeah, that's a very different schedule. So we would need to contend with overlaying all of those different deadlines together.
Just to know at some point sooner, I think, than later, what construction grants we would be eligible.
I mean,
You know, like what's worth going out for? I know that Upper Hudson has some smaller ones and things like that, but are there other pools of money that would be worth our time, putting time and energy into applying for, as well as the impact on any timeline that we're already discussing?
Yeah.
You know, is it gonna slow down the bond project to the point where we wouldn't even be ready by May? So we need to understand that too, like what's the pot of money we're going for, where is it located, and how long it takes to access it.
Right.
Any other questions or points that people want to raise while we have Suzanne here? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thanks,
so
Suzanne.
much. Have a great night.
Good night. The next item on the agenda is a financial report. Again, there'll be no action taken. It's just more of an informational presentation, please.
So I just want to make a few comments about the financial report. We're, only 1 month into the new fiscal year, so there's not a lot of activity other than contractually obligated expenses. We have received about 88% of state aid so far, and the remainder will typically receive in November. I wanted to do a sort of a final report for FY23 so that you could see where our variances are and understand that there have been a few year-end adjustments already, and there may be 1 or 2 more once the auditors complete their field work. The auditors will be here on August 24th and 25th for preliminary field work, and then September 11th through the 13th for the audit. I don't anticipate too much in the way of adjustments, but they might come up with 1 or 2. So our net surplus, as we indicated in the June report, was $495,000. There have been a few adjustments that have already been made that brought that down to about $471,000. So it looks like we're going to have a surplus well over $400,000.
Jeff, can I ask you a question? Is that your screen we're looking at?
Yes.
Can you hit the plus button once, please? Just thank you.
Jeff, do you want to maybe scroll down to show the revenue and expense report and the explanation? Yeah, that one. Yeah.
Okay.
So I just wanted to indicate where some of the variances are. It's basically things we've talked about all year long, right? I mean, we were lucky to take advantage of higher interest rates, so our interest income was much higher than what we budgeted. We obviously are under in salaries. We have had vacancies and position changes. And then, under a bit in supplies and services, particularly supply chain issues for print materials was a reason for some of that. And then, of course, we didn't spend all of our capital expenditures budget, and we didn't have to touch contingency. And those are the major factors that contributed to the surplus. Anybody have any questions about any of that? I also did a revised or an adjusted budget based on the final contract that was put into place and the changes in salaries. This is something we'll probably have to vote on next month, but I wanted to get it ready. We could just show it to you. So what I did was adjust the salary lines for what the salaries will really be reflected, and adjusted some other lines to offset those increases. And I think the big story here is that the net effect of the increase versus what was originally included in the budget was a little over 74,000. However, we had a librarian retire, and that salary line has been adjusted to reflect the replacement salary, which was quite a bit less. So the net change to the budget is only 44,000. I had, there was some extra money in health insurance to account for higher salaries. We thought we were going to go higher than 3%, and we certainly did. So that's coming back out. So health insurance is reflected in what we, our best estimate of what we think it's going to be. And then I put the difference, if you scroll down a little bit, Jeff, into interest income, because I was very conservative in budgeting for interest this year. I was afraid to budget too much, basically. But I don't think interest rates are going to come down very much, or if they do, it'll just be a little bit. And we are already going to be getting our earnings from the both the CD and the Treasury bill around November, December, and both of those are going to be around 20,000. So that's going to be 40,000 right there. So that's a cushion. But I'd rather be a little more conservative than not, because it's very hard to predict what interest rates are going to do. So that's sort of a bird's eye view of what the budget will probably look like, as long as the board approves it. And we'll talk about it some more next month.
Just again, for the public, for the benefit of anyone listening, those changes to the top section of this reflect from our negotiation and our execution of a new 5-year agreement with the union. It reflects negotiated items for an increased COLA to staff, for increased contributions from the library toward health insurance, and to increase part-time wages so that they are equitable with full-time wages, just so that everyone knows where that increase is coming from. Those increases, I am correct, did not affect anything else about the operational budget, any monies that we were spending on resources or collection.
Right.
Any other questions? And just a reminder, all that the warrant, the checks were approved last week when there was quorum in the room. I have a request for when this is presented at the next meeting. You said you adjusted a few lines to cover things. Just if you could tell us
If Jeff, scroll up a little bit, I'll tell you right now.
Okay.
Because I got it right there.
Not that I'm making like diamond, but I'm just curious,
No, it's not on the adjusted budget. It's on the final the revenue and expense report for the final year, right there. And scroll up a little bit, because there you go. Scroll down. Sorry, going the wrong way. There, adjustments. Okay, so we always have to do a payroll accrual, and we don't really know what that is in time for the board report that we prepare in early July. And that payroll accrual is related to, the timing of when the last payroll paycheck is issued. We might have a paycheck issued on, I don't know, let's say June 28th. So we have to accrue the 29th and the 30th. Plus, people are not paid to date. There's a 2-week lag. So there's a whole period that's being paid in July that really reflects June income.
I see.
So it's an accrual that we make. And we have to do the same thing with retirement. We get a better number what the retirement's going to be. We have to adjust that accrual. There was a small adjustment to interest income, and there might be, sometimes there's some encumbrance adjustments when the auditors go through their process.
All right, thank you. We move on. All right, so now we're at Jeff's director's report. Thank you, Sharon.
I'm coming. Just quickly note for everybody, the the personnel report, I requested the fill a full-time senior clerk and a part-time library page, and that was also approved at Wednesday's business meeting. All right, just quickly, I'll try to get this centered here for you. The geotechnical survey, which Suzanne hinted at, most of last week, we had a big drilling truck for 3 days last week running around in the parking lot. I think the workers got a lot more questions from our patrons than they're used to getting from maybe other places they're working, and they were good sports about interacting with our members of the public. I think there were a lot of comments about, are you fracking gas, or are you looking for oil? Is this how you're going to pay for the expansion? That sort of thing, and of just surveying the soil. In some cases, they had to go deeper down than they originally anticipated to find the type of soil they're looking for. And then you have got to the end of my geological knowledge as far as the sediments of the library property. So there, we don't have our final report on that. That will be forthcoming, and I'm sure it will be filtered through our structural engineer and through Suzanne. We'll talk about the plaza repaving a little bit later on this evening. We had a nice and busy month. It was really, maybe you're sick of hearing me say this every summer, but this really feels like the first summer post-pandemic where the summer reading program has felt like the summer reading program, and the numbers are reflective of that. We're getting back to where closer to where we expected to be. But interesting times. The computers continue to be really busy, but just sort of at one time of the day, in that middle of the day, it's just interesting use patterns continue. We had our library school intern completed his 150 hours. So it's always exciting for us when we get a library school intern who's actually interested in being a public librarian. We always like that. So he was fun to have, and we're sorry to see him go. Chris is working to expand and retool our volunteer program. We're working primarily because of the summer. We're focusing in on the teens. They're the ones that have the greatest need. They have availability in the summer. They need to, they're working on either PIG credits or other required credits. So the library's spending our time with them. In the fall, we expect to be incorporating more adult volunteers into our volunteer program. Lots of awesome programs, which I'm not going to read to you. But there's a banner in the hallway with the Be the Eye and Kind. People have loving taking their pictures out there. Like I said, I'm not going to belabor this, but lots of good programs. Again, summer reading, pretty good attendance. We're very happy. We had the animals were here. This goat was awesome. You just totally chill. I usually expect goats to be a little belligerent. This guy was totally chill. He was great. We have been doing, I just want to highlight this outreach that we've been doing. Typically we do school year outreach during the school year, but some students in the Bethlehem School District get extended school year services over the summer. And Beth has been going in and visiting the various classrooms. There's different styles of classroom over the summer, and she's been visiting all of them and been running through services in the library, doing story times, puppets, all of that with those students, so that we can be, she's the library's face with those kids over the summer. So we're happy to see that's an expanded outreach for us for the first time this year. Lots of farmers market. We had a little conversation about that before the meeting. Continue to be very popular. People love seeing us at the farmers market. This Thursdays in the Park, which I always like to bring up because it's such a great collaborative effort between the library, the Friends of the Library, the parks, the Friends of the Parks, all of these groups coming together to provide these Thursdays in the Parks program. If we could control the weather, we'd be happier, but they are nice to have those programs going on. Just some end of the year wrap up as far as statistics are concerned. We keep looking at curbside. So we use the text option where people text us. We know about the percentage of people that text us, so that we know we can keep about how many curbside transactions we have. So for July 2023 over August 2021, which is where we had a lot of the curbside had come back down to normal a little bit. We had 90 text transactions and an estimated 240 to 260 transactions. So we continue to see robust use of curbside. It's not where it was at the height of the pandemic, but we continue to see robust use of curbside. So we're keeping track of those. just some other numbers here. Our total library holdings are 26% higher than that pre-pandemic library, that 2018, 2019. And even our physical items were about 4%, 3.5% higher of the number of items that are in the building. So overall, most of the additions, with the expansion of the collection have been, obviously we had more physical books than ebooks, but the expansion has been primarily driven, the expansion of the collection has been primarily driven by electronic items. So door count was down about 46% over that pre-pandemic number, and we'll show you some of those statistics later on. But our circulation continues to be almost at normal. So just a quick look when Suzanne mentioned that that our library is the busiest library in Upper Hudson. I just throw those numbers in there because I don't belabor that with our fellow libraries, but I do like to note that we're not the largest community in the system, but we do see the most robust circulation, physical circulation. So we continue to come to a more normal pattern of our meeting rooms. We bumped up against the capacity of the room a couple times. We had, with the Drag Story Hour, the Reptile Super Show, and then a couple times, we would, if we had the ability to bring an evening on the green inside, in a good way, because if we bring evening on the green inside, it's really not a good experience for folks. We lose most people that just go home. But if we had a way to do that inside, we would love for that to be a case, and it just continues to make the case for revamped meeting rooms. So in our statistics, our circulation continues to be up. Last year it's up about 1% where we were. We thought we were doing good to be where we were last year. So a 1% increase in circulation. At the same time, go back to this door count number, a 23% increase in door count. So what I'm looking for, the numbers that I'd like to see is our first post-pandemic 20,000 person month. We're getting closer and closer to that. That's kind of getting closer to what I would have liked to have seen before the pandemic. And then I'm still waiting for my first 60,000 circ month post-pandemic, but we're inching closer and closer to those numbers, and I continue to be happy to see that use. So that's my report for this month. Any questions for me?
Just to be clear, Jeff, the door count was down 43% from pre-pandemic, but
Yes.
up 23% from last year.
Correct. So when I do this, and I'll try to scale this to the time and your patience for me as far as statistics are concerned, but I'll show you some longer look graphs that will sort of bring that. I shouldn't have just used words. I apologize. The graph would make that super clear. So we'll look at those in a few minutes.
Sorry to jump the gun.
No, it's okay.
Yeah, I do have a question, but anybody else question? Jeff, you mentioned it early on about the Chris retooling the volunteer program. I think it's like the second thing you mentioned. Yep. Is it the volunteer coordinator position? Is that person involved in that discussion?
That position is open right now, and Chris is doing yeoman's work, keeping us afloat with that. So okay. Chris is doing a good job, and she's relooked at the volunteer handbook, gave that a much needed update, got the entries for the volunteer opportunities up online so that our volunteers can sign up online using our software, and that helps keep track of our statistics. So we make sure that we know, who's where, what volunteers have been gone through the orientation. But Chris herself is running people through those orientations right now.
I want to appreciate her efforts. Then I didn't realize. So has that volunteer coordinator position ever been filled? Because I know
it has. It's just open now. Yeah. It's one of our open positions back up on our personnel report.
Okay, great, thank you. That's it. Sarah, you good? All right, thank you. And it's over to Lisa for Upper Hudson.
Upper Hudson does not meet in August typically, so no meeting for us this month, but very soon the services committee that I sit on will be starting to look at grant proposals and submissions, So you haven't gotten anything right yet?
No.
Okay.
All right, so that's it?
That's it.
Okay, good. New businesses, committee appointments. I know that Mark had proposed this for people. I think this may have been the committees from last year, this time is from last year, is that correct?
I think it's a little, I think he's made a couple adjustments, but you know, these are his proposed. I don't want to speak for Mark because I'm not Mark, but he threw these together sort of based on what some folks said about what they had time to do and what they might want to do. And so he just assigned people to these.
It's changed.
So
It is changed, I can tell.
Yep.
I'm not sure if folks have comments on where their names appear or want to suggest any adjustments or.
I volunteered for some.
Well, I mean, I'll say, no one asked me my opinion, so I kind of would like a fuller discussion of it when everyone's here,
Okay,
you know, rather than just assuming.
okay, so this should be tabled till September, I guess, Jeff, for like.
no, we can't take any action on it anyway. So you know, officially in the bylaws, Mark seats the committees, but I think he's very open to a discussion.
So people should just make note of where their names appear and then we'll have a discussion. I prefer having it at the meeting as opposed to back and forth in email because just things can get lost. Okay. The next one is automated materials handling. Oh, it's back.
Yeah, that's me. I brought it back.
It's okay.
Here, so I don't have to talk to anyone back. So basically, we're bringing it back because we're in the middle of this capital project. And we are right at the cusp of when it makes sense for us to identify potential vendors for RFID technology, to start the dialogue with our architects to determine what kind of combinations within the actual footprint we need to build in. So that gets into the curbside, whether we want bulk return, how much clearance there is to create to avoid a bottleneck. How do we provide enough conveyance between an interior drop box and a drive-up drop box to potentially save us some costs in the long run, so we don't have two different sets of machines competing for the same product, right? So that's why we're having the conversation. So I just wanted to start off, and I think this is probably old hat for everyone here. Just an overview or a refresher on what is this thing that we're talking about. So it's the RFID tags, it's the programming of the tag so it communicates with our ILS. We're looking at the circulation of that material. How does RFID enhance our circulation of material for both patrons and staff members? We're looking at the self-check, security gates, and then automated handling, or self-check-in in this case. So if we navigate, what are we actually looking to accomplish? So when we talk about RFID, these are the three goals that come to mind. How do we enhance patron experience? How do we address staff workload and ergonomics? And then what is this doing for our collection management? So patron experience. The biggest piece of RFID on the patron side is that it's allowing them to check out bulk material accurately, right? So when we look at the check-in and check-out, it's a simplified environment. On traditional library materials, a patron walks up to a self-check machine. They're looking for a barcode, whether that's on the back of a book, the inside of a book. If they're walking up to the front desk, staff members are manipulating items one at a time, looking for that barcode. In an RFID environment, patrons and staff members are taking stacks of material. They're putting them on RFID readers. The reader appears to be reading that information simultaneously. It happens within microseconds of each scan. And so there's no manipulation of the material. So it increases the speed of the checkout for that patron or the transaction at the front desk for that patron. And then the accurate so when you have these items that are tagged with RFID tags, the system is scanning these through. They're we're not seeing the same errors in terms of we're not scanning a barcode or we're scanning an incorrect barcode. We all know books or media items have multiple ISSN numbers on the back. So we avoid conflict between what patrons are scanning, what staff members are scanning, or in a worst case scenario, what's not being scanned. So staff workload ergonomics. Essentially, staff are realizing the same benefit. It's simplifying the checkout process for the staff members. They're able to process more material in a shorter period of time. The sorter conveys, checks in materials for those staff members. It communicates with our ILS. So as items are being checked through the automated sorter, status changes on that item are happening in real time. And then the sorter separates our days, right? So we can set up an automated handling machine to pre-sort materials into smaller chunks that we could then bring out to the library floor to be reshelved or activate for the next person who wishes to have this item. And then collection management. Because of the accuracy of the check-ins, we see fewer mistakes in the ILS where someone may come in and ask, where's this item? Item isn't located on the shelf for one reason or another. Because we see the increase in accuracy, the holding within our OPAC or online catalog are a little cleaner for our patrons. And that's where that ILS integration and automatic status update comes in. So costs, because we want to talk about a couple different layers of costs. There's the one-time implementation cost of the RFID product, right? So we're looking at tags. And in 2019, I placed an order for 180,000 tags. The price at that point was 13 cents per tag, right? Whether that price has changed since 2019, I'm not sure. I couldn't answer that. Again, a lot of this gets bundled in a one-time purchase. So there's a deeper discount when you order that kind of bulk material. We look at the software interface. Most of the vendors that we look at will issue the software for the library to own. So either we have a site license for that, where we could then download to other machines, or we purchase the software in one bundle. The ongoing cost beyond that, which we can look at in another slide, is the system maintenance, right? It's that annual cost that's associated with the software. Pricing for the self-check machines, the staff workstations, security gates, and automated handling. So when we look at self-checkout machines, if we look at an all-in-one unit, we're typically looking at a range between $5,000 and $8,000. When we look at a staff workstation, we're really identifying an RFID pad. So anywhere between $1,200 and $1,500. Security gates, again, range. I'm a little out of date with security gate ranges. So I'm not going to touch that. And then the automated handling machine, anywhere between $120,000 to $250,000. So obviously that is the most expensive piece of the RFID project. It also happens to be the piece where you see the largest return on the investment over a prolonged period of time. So some costs. RFID tag programming. We're looking at a combination of whether this could be done with in-house staff. I put temporary workers down, basically staff that we're bringing in that already work for the organization, whether it's part-time or otherwise, volunteers, contract services, which will be done through one of our vendors at the time of acquisition for them to bring their people in to do some tagging or training, and then possibly a combination of all of those. And then reduced access to collections. So this one's a tricky one. Collections that we've already bought and exist on the floor may be impeded, or the access to those collections may be impeded if we're actively tagging in that area. So obviously people will, it's an inconvenience for people. that you try to mitigate when you plan or you put together your tagging outline. But you can't ignore that it exists, it's there. Ongoing costs, that's the system maintenance, that's that ongoing annual fee for your system. I don't know how else I could explain this one. The tag purchasing, which would be the ongoing tag purchasing, and then the tag programming, which is that staff component. Now, we can outsource some of this. Organizations like Baker and Taylor, where we purchase the majority of our book material, will tag and program tags, or tag book material and program tags, 95 cents for an item. So we have to weigh out the cost benefit of having a staff member do that in-house, buying the tags ourselves and programming versus outsourcing it to a third party like Baker Taylor. And then benefits. So we look at tangible benefits, it's improved time. Processes are improved, we save some staff time, and we look at cost avoidance. So we purchased this system. We know what the annual maintenance cost for that going out years into its depreciation will be. We know what that upfront cost is, and we can look at what we're getting back over the long haul. It's completely independent of other costs that may be associated with automated handling or check-in and check-out. So it allows us to essentially budget a little better. The intangible, improved collection management, right? We have this accuracy component. We are making the assumption that the machine is making our check-in and check-out more accurate. Therefore, the ILS is becoming more accurate for people to find and identify items or materials that they want that may be in the library. And then the increased speed and accuracy of check-in and check-out. That's it. Basically, I kind of threw up a couple images, kind of going clockwise from the top. It's a row of self-checks. We have an interior automated sorter coming down here, an RFID set up for hold retrieval. If we didn't really talk about this, but it's an option, exterior, interior, and then bulk return for driver vehicles. So if you have any questions, I'm here.
All right, so the last time we looked at this, not very many libraries locally had it. I think Saratoga had it. And there were some issues with it. So who else has it now? And have any issues been kind of ironed out? And
So the important question to ask is, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, along with that, I just want to raise the issue of public's response to auto checkout generally. It's not positive right now. Because it sort of, you know, feeds into the, oh, you're trying to get rid of your staff model of management. And I don't think that's what we're trying to do at all here. But I think it maybe looks like that on the surface, so.
Yeah, so let me get the first half of that. In system, Guildland has RFID automated sorting. I think when we look at who in the area has automated sorting, it's our advantage if more people in the system are in it, because then we have fewer items that we have to address that are the outlier material. So Guildland being in is a benefit to us, local libraries, Saratoga, Schenectady, Crandall Library are some of the more established organizations with RFID. Saratoga is kind of an outlier in that it does not have automated sorting, but Schenectady and Crandall do, as does Guildland Public. And yeah, I think when we look at this on the table, and our goals of why we want to do this, that first goal, patron experience, it becomes an option. Do you want to use the self-check? Fine, self-check is there. You want to come up to the front desk? We'll always have people at the front desk. You can do that. If you prefer to use the mobile app on your phone, you can just walk through the library and scan items with your mobile app. If you're doing book returns, you could drop off to one of our drop boxes. You could do an interior drop. You could bring an item up to the front desk. But I think it's more or less the conversation of how do you expand the person's options walking in, and then how does that patron ultimately want to interact with the building and staff?
Jeff, I interrupted you. Were you?
No, I was just gonna say, the Gilderland was the big change recently that, so they went with not just the tags, but the full materials handling, and you're in the room, you're talking to one of the key people there on the ground who did it. So he has a lot of experience with implementing an RFID system. And now we have that experience in-house, which I think is a good thing for us. It's definitely time for us to look at this at the time of a renovation. It seems at this point, again, we're not interested. I think we've shown with our current self-checkout, we're not interested in driving people to that. We want that to be an option for people who see it as a benefit, which some people do. But we in no way have any intention of removing that personal touch and that checkout experience at the desk. Some libraries really try to push that as the sort of main checkout, and I think that community and personal interaction is a thing that some people come to the library looking for, and I have no interest in removing that as an option for people. The money in the system, both the expense and the return, are here in this scene at that materials handling sorter. The check-in process is a complicated process, and it eats up a lot of time. It's largely unsung because it's behind the scenes, but it's this is the section where the system earns its keep and would continue to earn its keep going forward. So that's that. I just there were some questions about RFID. What does that mean? What is it? And because we had Phil's expertise, I wanted to give him an opportunity to present this both to you and to the community if anybody wants to watch this later on and have that presentation available on the website. Thanks, Phil.
Thank you.
Yeah. Jeff, before I need to understand this better, so maybe I'll come in for like a tour, because I'm still trying to wrap my head around like the different parts. And how does it fit in terms of the renovation project, or is it totally separate? I mean, or should it be connected?
It has to be. It doesn't have to be connected. I'm sorry, for ease and just from a smarts standpoint. If you need a room, I mean, you look at this small picture here. I could blow it up, but in any case, it needs a room and it needs some space. And if we're going to think about it, if we're never going to do it, then it's fine. But if we're going to think about it, now's the time for us to think about it, because as those staff spaces are being designed, it can be integrated so easily into those designs rather than trying to shoehorn it in later. So it's the right time for us to be thinking about this. I think the easiest way is if the folks at Gilderland Library love showing their machine off, so they would welcome us to come over and take a peek at how it looks there. It's probably easier than having us sit here and talk about it.
And do you have a sense of when you'd actually have numbers for the costs? Because we saw a cost column, but we didn't see any numbers. Does that make sense?
Yep. Yeah, I got you, Phil. I don't know if you have. We're meeting with some vendors.
Okay, so maybe by the next meeting, you might have some actual kind of a budget number, like a number that we get next month.
How about we'll put a schematic design level budget together, and we'll have that to present to you. I think that's fair.
Sarah, do you have any questions or?
I just wanted to ask if this is technology that we could use and think about to deliver service to areas of the community that we've had some complaints from in Glenmont, or is it something that we could put a point or something over there, or is that like too crazy into the future?
No, I mean, you're looking at this thing down here in the bottom
Yeah.
right. No, you're exactly right. And we've looked at this over and over, the costs. We had a guy from Pitney Bowes really do the hard sell on us for this, for these lockers. I mean, you see them everywhere now. You go into Whole Foods, there's Amazon,
Lowe's.
right? Lowe's, right? Exactly. We're not the only people that think about this. So it's absolutely possible. It is 100% possible to do this today. Yesterday, the technology exists, is robust. You don't necessarily need RFID. It could probably enhance the experience a little bit. But these pickup lockers, it's the question of is that where the trustees want to spend the money, which in the past we've had different discussions about, and then finding that location where we can house these things in those various areas around town.
Jeff, did I hear you say you'd offer a tour to a library that had this? Did you say-
Absolutely, Gilderland. Yeah, we could.
Okay.
They'd love to show it. Happy to do it.
Yeah, maybe just put that in the minutes of, we'll get that going, and if people want to jump on the tour, we'll set a date or something, because I need to kind of see it. And
I think you really would. Seeing it would explain it way better. And we could put up videos and stuff, but I really think if you saw it work, it really makes it really clear.
Great, thank you. Any other comments or questions on this item? Okay, so now we're on to t-shirts.
Okay, so t-shirts. Now this, we have a proposal here that Kristen has put together for us to provide t-shirts for the staff, and reason being, maybe Kristen could do a better job than me of this remotely, but the total expense, the total projected budget for this is about $1,500. And that's within my authorization limit, but this has been a little bit of a contentious thing in the past with the board. So I wanted to bring it here and have a little bit of a discussion here with this. We do a lot of outreach. You've heard us talking about the outreach at the farmers market. I think some of you have come with us along at the Memorial Day parade, and there's an expression that no one knows who we are. We're not necessarily marked. We use buttons, or we have other ways of marking us as library employees. And the proposal is to provide those a couple different designs of shirts, either the Libraries Are for Everyone shirt or the simple Bethlehem Public Library logo shirt, and make that available. Make that available to the staff, particularly because we're doing so much outreach, and as well as the trustees, because when we're out in the community representing the library, it's good to have us easily identifiable. So that's the reasoning.
You don't need
your thoughts.
Thank you. Are you informing us? Remind me again what?
Oh no, I'm not informing, because this has been a little bit contentious at a couple different boards. I'm not informing anybody of anything, but I do.
Okay.
I am interested in hearing your thoughts on this.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone have thoughts?
I mean, I don't remember being on the board when there was contention over this, so.
Oh, okay. Maybe I've been around too
I think
long.
I'm the longest board member sitting here, so.
I think we would support it. I think if we would support it. I mean, if anything, I would like to expand it to offer. Do we want, I mean, if it's an identifying member for staff and an identifying item for staff and for trustees, I'm not sure if we would want to offer that to the public. But I feel like that's also a, people like merch.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I was thinking about the friends, and maybe they would want to sell them, so the question is, do you want them only for staff or order extra and people for
We
purchase?
could always have two different kinds. We could always have, specific ones that are just for staff and others that we sell.
Okay.
I like that idea. I know I was the one for the parade that was like, do we have something to wear to identify who we are? So I would like one shirt for staff and trustees. And then I think it's also a great idea to have like a different shirt that people could buy to support the friends.
Okay.
So,
Well, great.
Did you want me to, just a couple of logistics on that. I already have created like it's a Zazzle store, so you can share it out with the friends, and we've kind of been doing these informal shirts like this for a long time, but we just had to self-fund them. And so I think that every time I wear my Libraries Are for Everyone shirt, I have a bunch of people that are like, oh, where'd you get that? How can I get that? So, I mean, we can always steer them to those things, or the friends can do a fundraiser with that, but.
think you hear our support, Jeff.
That's fantastic. That makes me so happy. Thank you. I really,
And
I
if
really
anything, you know, given your comment, is maybe have the one that's in green be a staff shirt, and then the other, I don't know, I can't, to be honest with you, I can't really see that far, but it sounds like it says libraries are for everybody. That might be a nice, oh, there you go, thank you. One that's for sale. I trust your decision or judgment on that, but
Okay. Well, great. Isn't that lovely? Thank you all. I really appreciate it. And I think the staff who are at the farmers market would really appreciate being able to sort of instantly and easily identify themselves as a library employee. Okay, awesome. Thank you.
and now we're going to the public service reorganization proposal that has been discussed with the personnel committee. I think Lisa and I were both at that meeting.
And Sarah?
Sarah, you may have been there too, but Jeff has a proposal.
Sarah was there and I wasn't.
Yeah. So for Caroline's benefit,
Sarah was here.
Sarah was there, you weren't there?
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Sorry, my mistake, thank you. And there's no action to be taken, but again, you're just informing us and have another discussion when there's a quorum, is that correct?
correct. I'd like to have this up and ready for the September meeting, so it can be considered by the full board. But I thought it was, it was in consultation with Charmaine, it seemed like a good idea to bring this up to the board so we can have a discussion about it. In my proposal, basically, I'm going to roll down to the proposed section of my organization chart here. Just show that we would reorganize the public services department to have a single supervisor. Right now, one of the sources of confusion for some of the staff folks these folks in the public service department is that they answer to both, directly answer for different parts of their job to different folks in the department. Some of it for some things that answer directly to Christine as assistant director. Some of these things here, this is Frank, who's the head, he's currently the coordinator for the Librarian 2 coordinator for readers and reference and readers advisory, and then Lauren, who's the programming outreach librarian 2. So we're just looking to simplify that all here, where Lauren would answer to Frank, and then all of these folks their primary supervisor would be Frank, and then have dash lines here to Lauren as far as the parts of their duties that have to do with programming. But ultimately, Frank would be the supervisor for the department as a librarian 3. There's a couple reasons for this. When I came here in 2000, there were 7 administrative librarians, and during the years after 2009, when I became, and then when I became director at 2011, it was one of our moves was to eliminate administrative librarians in the hopes of saving money and to prevent layoffs. And it absolutely worked. That was a thing that was successful. So we kept more direct service staff there, but it has led to some holes in our administrative structure, some of which has been, sort of retweaked and reorganized as far as Jen's position, which has been great for the organization. But I also think this would allow for some improvements to operations in the public service department, as well as free up Christine to help me and assist me, especially as we move into the already increased amount of work that we have with this building project. So those are basically my goals for this project. You can read my reasons here, and the sort of ongoing structural increases of about 17,000 a year for the 2 promotions that I'm proposing, because one of the one increase would be to move from a librarian 2 to a librarian 3, and obviously there's a promotion there involved in that, and that would be a little bit more money. And the other one is to take a library clerk 1 and move it into a library assistant, which would have about a $9,500 a year ongoing structural increase, and that would help assist the department in scheduling the desk, take some of that burden off of the librarian 2 and move that to the library assistant, as well as bring the room calendaring function under the public services department. So there's my visual of my proposed new piece of the org chart for public services department. And then down below, I have sort of a glossed set of job specs, both for the librarian 3 here and with the bullets being specifically about this position, and for the assistant director 3, again, with some specifics. So the first level bullets here are all in this Albany County Civil Service job spec that's not under our control, but under here are just some of the updates of the duties that we would be expecting these positions to do as we move forward.
Sarah, do you have anything to add? I know you were in the personnel discussion of this.
I don't have anything to add.
I will say that Jeff spent a good half hour answering questions and discussing the graphics. So I think it is something, if I'm not mistaken, Sarah, that the personnel committee supports, correct?
That is correct. And I do think the graphic turned out really well. It helps explain it much more succinctly.
So this will come up in September, Jeff, is that correct? You're looking for
Absolutely.
action?
Yeah, you bet.
Any other questions from trustee? Okay, thank you. Year-end statistics presentation.
Okay, so I'm going to stop the share on this right now. Now, first, I'm going to just read the room here. Are you in for a little bit of statistical discussion, or do you want me to kick that or just go semi-quickly, or what would you like me to do?
Good question. Is that just a straight out presentation?
Just a quick presentation, but it's totally under our control. If you guys are getting a little tired, I know stats can be a little boring.
Is it something that can be put to September? Because I know we still have several items left.
It
Something
can
that
be.
can wait till September?
It can be, absolutely.
Is that, I'm looking at any head nods or.
It's not, I'm nodding.
Yes. okay.
I'm seeing some nodding. I was sensing I'm pretty remote, and I'm
September.
sensing that maybe it's a good time to
Thank
for us
you.
not to do some statistics. You got it.
All
We'll
right.
waive it. Happy to talk through. I get excited about statistics, but man, not
Any
everybody
other
gets
new
to
business?
7:49. Yeah.
Any new business that's not on the agenda? No? Okay, so we're going into old business, the geotechnical survey, an
Oh.
update.
God, I think, okay. So, I gave you a quick update during my report. Sorry, I'm back. We're drilling all over the place. I found out how much I don't know about, soils, and, they found a lot of wet soil, a lot of wet clay and sand down there. Almost sounds like it's the bottom of a ancient glacial lake, which it is. So, we'll know more about that when that report comes. So that's all. I just wanted people to know what the drilling truck was in the parking lot. People were very intrigued by this. So I think I do want to say, as far as our neighbors are concerned, there was some noise with it, but the folks were extremely respectful of our neighbors and keeping to the quiet hours in the town. And they were mostly done by 3 o'clock, so it really didn't ruin anybody's evening. So.
So we're moving, and any questions? No? The plaza entry update, Jeff?
Okay, just really quickly, I believe the town board and we approved the MOU between the town and the library to pave the plaza. I said in my report that it's going to be towards the end of September, towards the end of August. It's to the end of September, beginning of October. That's when we're looking at that is going to happen. Our guys are going to remove the bricks. They're going to come in and they're going to lay blacktop in where those bricks were in an attempt to ameliorate some of the slipping and icing situation that we have on our plaza. So I just want to thank everybody over at the town, in the Public Works Department, the Highway Department, for their fantastic advice and their willingness to work with us on this. So.
Any questions?
I just want to ask, how confident are we that the communication with the town in terms of the time frame is going to be accurate, and we're not pulling bricks out and they're not waiting? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because
Yes.
we're doing that part of the work and they're needing to get here to fill the
Yes.
holes.
You got it. So
I don't want to see any, like, you know,
So the
There'll be
key,
no
the
entry.
key to all,
angles
yeah.
twisting out there.
The key to all of this is that first section right outside the front door on the plaza. That with I really don't have an option to reroute people around that. Once we're past that, you can get people easily into the building right on the plaza. During the day when they're doing that part, we'll probably route people in through the garage, which they think is the entry to the library anyway. So we'll have people come in there. That's what we've done in the past. But that is the piece where the communication needs to be the strongest. And I've I have been very clear in my communications with them that is critical for us to not be pulling those bricks. They've done, our guys have pulled some of those bricks out, so they know about how much time they need. They can do it actually with relatively short notice. It's not a terrible job. So, and we've got Scoopy to help us. So, they're ready, and the maintenance guys are excited about this. I think they will bend over backwards to make sure that we don't have to go through another winter with those bricks out there. If that doesn't answer your question, I think I've communicated as clearly as I can the importance of us getting this, and I think absolutely the folks across the way understand that we don't want to have the front of the library ripped up and then just be sitting there waiting. But they have control of the equipment. We're not going with some third-party vendor. It's the actual highway department equipment.
Yeah, but yeah, it's a good point, because we don't want to, to inconvenience patrons, we don't want a public relations nightmare, so, yeah. And I think, speaking for Mark Kissinger, if I might, because he was in the room last week, the idea of beautification after is something that he's interested in, whether it's somehow making it look as nice as possible until the more permanent bond issue can be resolved, what it's gonna look like, and I'll mention that, and I also think public information to the public is going to be important too, even though it's, I don't want to say it's a minor thing, but just to let people know that this is what's happening, and this is what it's going to look like, and this is why.
Absolutely.
Yeah, maybe Kristen can come up with a chalk drawing or painting.
Or something, some beautification, sure.
Yeah. Something pretty, a little contrast.
Okay, anything else on the plaza entry update?
Nothing specifically, just if people want to see what the MOU looks like, it's in the board packet, and I'm not going to go through it, but it's there it is.
Thank you. I think all four of us, so Sarah, you were in person last week, correct? You in the room, I think.
Yes.
All of us. No, you weren't, okay, Mark was, okay, so most of us have already seen that too, so.
I did look at it though.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we're moving on to this, the first actual kind of visual to the board on the gifts, memorials, bequest, and naming opportunities policy. So, Jeff, can I take this? Is that all right?
Absolutely.
First, I need to acknowledge Jen and Jeff for their patience, and we've spent a lot of time on this policy, and because my computer doesn't translate well to Jen's computer, we've had to put in extra time, and she's given very generously of her literally space where I've sat in her office. We went over to create this draft, and so part of what you're seeing is the problematic interface between computers. So the little yellow boxes and the little numbered boxes are basically flagging comments on different computers. But this is not a first read of this policy. Obviously, there's a quorum in the room, but we wanted to flag areas. So you've gotten the rough text of the policy, and with several flags of where we want board feedback and attention before the policy can be fully drafted. So I won't go over all of these now. A number of them are basically, some of them are questions like, should we accept anonymous donations? Some are things that have to be checked with Shari, and the financial aspects of things that will we accept other types of monetary donations? So that's item 5, and 6 is I think note 6 it literally says ask Shari. So there are things that have to be fleshed out in terms of what is possible in terms of financial donations, and a lot of the other comments are just asking you to check languages, language that has been used in the policy. For example, I didn't like the idea of naming rights, so we call them naming designations, and then we call them also naming opportunities. So there's some, so you'll see where those on the second page where it says recognition of donations through name designations. This is actually going to be a single policy. They just happen to be printed out on 2 sheets. Some of those comment boxes are just saying, this is the language we use, we can change it if you don't like it. And there's very little to actually be discussed in terms of substance. For example, most of it is like, should we put in examples of, restrictions, etc. So it is fairly well formed, but it's open for discussion. And the boxes and the numbers will point you to the areas that we would like for eventually trustee either approval of naming of terminology that exists in the policy or changes in that, and then some areas to discuss in terms of actual feedback. For example, one of the clauses in here says 75% of a donation has to be received before a designation goes on. I think that's on the second page, Jeff, second one. Number 5 on the second page, you'll see, I think it's highlighted 75%. That's an area that the board has to weigh in. It's like, do you want 75? Do you want something else? A lot of the other things are more minor. So unless there's any questions or people want to come discuss this, it's basically really to flag this for a significant discussion in September. So if you could pay attention to the numbers in the boxes, that's what we'll come and ask for discussion on. Is there
And I do
anything you
wanna-
want to add, Jeff?
Yep,
Or
Just really quickly, this is actually cogent because I have, and it's not about necessarily the rooms, which I know is what sort of kicked this off originally. In the past, we had a program series dedicated to a patron named Ann Siegel in memory of her. And recently I was contracted by her daughter who lives out of state, and she was interested in restarting that program series and was saying, what would that take to restart that? And I'm trying to say, well, give me a little bit, because we're literally working on that right now. So we do occasionally get people who are interested in in having, it's not just necessarily rooms or places in the library, but also like a program series. And and what would the library want to see as far as making that opportunity available? In the past, it was a little bit more sort of handled as a one-off thing. So.
Yeah, Jen.
Thanks.
That's all.
Those areas definitely point to the sections that the board could consider. The wording and things like that would be helpful.
So the timeline for this then is if people come with ideas and we have a significant discussion in September, we can work it, and then it'll be a first read in October and a second read in November. So that, Jeff, I think time frame, the earliest to be ready would be for passage would be November. Because we have to discuss these points. Is that okay? Is that your understanding?
Yes.
And that's only if we resolve everything in September. And also notice, since you talked about the program, that the potential donor was interested in, there are no amounts listed in the policy. Some policies, and that's something for the trustees, some policies have a table saying you want a room, it's this much. So this policy does not state any guidelines on what amounts get what. So that, can we just flag that for discussion? Is that do the trustees want to have a price chart, a donation chart in there with recommended amounts for recommended items? Do we say something, Carolyn?
Yeah, I'm just gonna put out there that, and I think everyone will work on this, and I will go through it thoroughly, but in light of recent events, things like sponsoring a program or donating a program or donating materials that are generally within the discretion of the library staff and the board becomes a much stickier wicket. So I will just say that I think that might be some of the discussion that I bring. I had originally envisioned this as a naming for rooms. I think that when you get into the operations of the library, this becomes more complicated.
Okay.
So I will simply say that those will be, I think, some of my comments next month.
So maybe some of the discussion is like, do you want to separate out physical spaces from programs? Yes, I don't know.
Yeah, I will say I had originally envisioned this as, like I said, an opportunity to honor someone or to, for an amount of money for their name to literally go on a room or on a brick or something along those lines. To expand it to the idea of things that are the operations of the library that exist within the trained staff. becomes much more complicated for me.
Okay, okay. I saw a note that we may have to move along just in terms of internet connection, so okay, so we'll have further discussion. So Jeff, November the earliest, and it might be a little bit after that. Okay. That's it, other old business. Yeah, I think, wasn't your the evaluations on there
That's
in the material?
not future.
Next one.
Oh, future, good, okay, thank you. So moving, no other old business, thank you, future business. This is just in September, we should just check the time frame and the materials. This is what was developed from last year's discussion, significant discussion, and whether or not this time frame still fits. And then for people to comment at all on the materials. Is that correct, Jeff?
That's correct. And I'm sorry if I'm breaking it out, but the cogent part of this is that those committee seats, whoever is the chair of the personnel committee, has the responsibility of sort of overseeing this process, so that those two things tie together.
So if your name is on that committee, and I am looking, whether I stay on the personnel committee or not, I'm looking for someone else to chair that committee and therefore take the lead in running this. But it is very organized, and if someone takes that role, then I can walk you through the process that I already have on my computer, and then but that we have to discuss it in September as I guess new business or whatever, to make sure everything's in line for the evaluation process to kick off in October.
Yeah.
Okay, there's no need to adjourn, take a motion to adjourn, because this is just informational meeting. That I think the material will be online for the evaluation and the forms, both for the staff and for the board. So does anyone have any party questions or issues, things they need to name?
Thanks to everyone for joining virtually.
I'm sorry, say again?
I'm saying thanks to everyone who joined virtually.
Yeah, thank you for spending part of your vacation with us.
My pleasure.
All right, good night. Good night. Thank you of the staff who are here.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Good night. Good night, Jen. So just go in the bottom, wrap the live stream.
That's all. Did it run on something or?
Got it.
Sometimes you have to